In the 1960s, Masters and Johnson sat in their St. Louis laboratory watching people have sex, individually and together, through a one-way glass. Do you want to know what they saw? Hi, my name is Rick Higgins. Welcome to Mastering the Second Half, and today we're talking about sex. Well, technically we're talking about sex research, but hey, it's still sex. Now, back then in the 1960s, Masters and Johnson wanted to find out what was really happening with sex. They were trying to debunk a lot of the old Victorian claims that women didn't like sex, that women didn't enjoy sex. In their words, that women were merely receptacles for sex. And they came up with 4 basic steps for the whole sexual cycle, as they called it. Now, I want to read them to you because they're kind of interesting. They thought there was excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. Basically, you get excited, you have foreplay, you build up, you have an orgasm, and you're done. Now, for the longest time, that was pretty much the belief. And it is true to a certain degree, but it doesn't tell the whole picture. Much later studies actually came up with something, well, they added a step. They added a step to the beginning that carried through the whole thing. And this latest study, it was done purely on women. The word that they were mentioning was called desire. Now, this is a little difficult for me because I am a man, and the studies showed that men don't quite feel this in the same way. So a lot of what's coming out of my mouth is going to be fairly clinical. And I assume that women are going to be nodding their head when I say this. Desire. What the study found was that many women are not actually in the mood, even during the foreplay. They need to feel desire for themselves, desire for their partner, desire for the situation. They need to feel desirable and desired. And without that, they cannot progress to the other stages. And the other thing they found was that desire changed and peaked and moved along with the other stages. It was something that continued through. Whereas men, while men do have some element of it, the study definitely showed that this was very indicative of a woman's sexual pleasure. But let's get back to the Masters and Johnson's excitement. Foreplay, kissing, cuddling, touching. It is what causes us to have our arteries open up, to have everything begin to flow more, to have the heat, to have the passion. It's what causes men to get an erection and what causes women to get lubricated. It is what starts the process. And the new study showed that even during this portion, without a strong sense of desire, women are still basically feeling as they did an hour before. It is intrinsically important that desire be there for women before the foreplay starts, before the excitement phase starts, but even more so during it. Now, the plateau, basically Masters and Johnson had it right. This is just that period of time when you are building up. It is the act of sex. It is the act of foreplay and sex before you are done. And yeah, I guess watching through that one-way glass, you know, they pretty much got that part right. But stay tuned to the end because there's kind of a little fun fact of how they did that. Orgasm, they kind of got wrong, meaning Masters and Johnson. They described it as a climax, a boom, an explosion, an ending to the act of sex. And for a lot of people, that could be very true. But what the new study found, especially with women, was that there are all different kinds of orgasms. Yes, there are some big raging explosion fireworks type. There are some that are just more flowing and ebbing or subtle or almost not at all. What Masters and Johnson didn't quite understand was they thought that men and women had the same types of orgasms. Apparently it turns out we don't. So the orgasm part, they didn't quite get right because every woman is different. Every human being is different. Orgasm isn't just a boom, an explosion. And what the study also kind of showed was if that's what you're expecting, if that's what you were told is supposed to happen, well, you're normal if you don't, because that's not the only kind of orgasm. And the other thing that Masters and Johnson got partially right, partially wrong, was the resolution. They just kind of assumed it was over, you rolled over, you smoked a cigarette, and you went back to your normal life. What the new studies have shown is that, and especially with women, is that arousal continues even after orgasm. But it may manifest in a different way. Maybe it's in a sense of closeness, in a sense of touch. It doesn't actually have to be the act of sex, but the arousal and the desire is still very, very much there, even in the resolution phase. Now, what does this mean? Well, what it means is that couples, they need to understand that their type of sexual desire, their type of sexual preference, their movement through the cycle may not be what their partners are. Now, we all ask a little bit, do you like this? Do you like that? Do you mind if I'm on top? There's a lot of questions that we ask, but do we actually ask the bigger questions? And more importantly, do we tell before we are asked? Do we share openly what it is we like, how we perceive sex, how we go through the stages, the cycles of sex? What is important to us, what we enjoy the most? How many of you have had that conversation? I can honestly say, I haven't. Some, but I haven't. I just kind of assume that my partner knows. How is it with you? Do you just assume they know, or do you need to actually tell them? Okay, I want to give you 3 fun facts about orgasms, one of which has to do with Masters and Johnson. The first one, did you know that orgasms can cure intractable hiccups? There was actually a medical paper written on this. A guy had hiccups that just would not stop. And then when he had an orgasm, masturbation in his case, the hiccups went away. So the next time you're hiccuping, well, I'd go in the bedroom and just kind of, whatever it is you do. When Masters and Johnson were watching what was happening, it was very easy for them to see what was happening in the male world. They can visually see it. Men are outwardly facing. How did they see what was happening, physically happening in the women? And that is our number 2 a fun fact. Is they didn't give it a name, it's basically a dildo cam. They had a rigid dildo-like device with a camera inside of it, and it was attached to a motor. And this is what they would use for a woman would have sex with this motorized camera-enabled dildo. And that's how they could see inside to see what was happening. Now, the sad part is this device has been dismantled. I'm sure, though, you can probably find one very similar and much more technologically improved just by doing a Google search. And the third fun fact about orgasm, there was another sex researcher, Dr. Alfred Kinsey. And he got in his head, he wanted to know how far men could ejaculate. So he basically got an empty room, sort of, with a tape measure on the floor, and he had a lot of test men come out and go for distance. What he found was that about 3/4, and he also filmed this, by the way, about 3/4 of the men had no distance. It just sort of slopped, drizzled right out at the end. However, the world record holder in his study was, are you ready for this? We need a little drum roll. 8 feet. The guy actually made it 8 feet. Now, in his medical notes, Dr. Kinsey also noted that besides the camera and the tape measure, they also had to use several sheets on the floor to protect the oriental carpets. There you go, a whole bunch of fun facts about orgasm and even more about how to have a much better and healthy sex life. So with that, be healthy, be happy, and we will talk to you really, really soon. The word they were mentioning? The word they were mentioning was something that I can't remember what I'm saying. Okay, here we go. I am so mumble-nosed tonight, I just can't get my words out. Hello, I cannot speak. Why is it that I cannot remember 3 words put together?